What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Bartender. 2020 was 4 years ago, but if you're like most of us, we're still navigating the challenges of figuring out this remote employee thing. Well, we know someone who's cracked the code on this topic. We've got Tricia Shields, CHRO of a company called Naviant, on the program today. Who is Tricia? Well, we're going to share all of the Green Bay cheesehead goodness with you. She's full of tips and tricks to get and keep people involved, checked in, and feeling connected. Her company leverages technology to help build and maintain a thriving culture. She's been doing it for years now, and she's going to lay it all out for us today. This conversation was a ton of fun, and I think you're going to dig it. So buckle up, TCBers, grab your favorite cocktail, and let's get right on into it with Tricia Shields on today's TCB.
Welcome to SkyTeam's The Corporate Bartender, where we gather some of the best HR and people leaders to discuss what's happening on the people side of business. Now pull up a stool, belly up to the bar, and join us for The Corporate Bartender.
Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday. You know what that means. It's your favorite day and mine. It's Corporate Bartender Day. Today, we've crossed another threshold. It's a new month. It is the 4th of September. It is Labor Week. I heard that on a late night talk show, and I want to just adopt it because why stop with Monday? We should take the whole week off. It's Labor Week. It's the 4th of September, and it's the 206th time that we've gathered this group of awesome people. Today's going to be a fun day. We've got a guest, as you can see. She's the person that you don't know. Her name is Tricia Shields. She's the Chief HR Officer at Naviant. She brings 20 plus years of human resource experience, and she's done a lot of stuff. We're going to talk today about tech-fueled HR. Her company likes to leverage technology to automate stuff, and we're going to talk about how that applies here in the HR space and dealing with that as yet unresolved, very pesky remote workforce issue. So we're going to get into that with Tricia here in just a little bit. We've got a guest next week. We've got a guy. His name is Douglas Squirrel. He goes by Squirrel. That's it. Like Cher, like Madonna. He is Squirrel. He's a British guy, and he's written a book called Agile Conversations. And if anybody knows me, they know that I love taking agile software development principles and applying them to the people side of business. So that's what he's done in this book. Transform your conversations, transform your culture. Looking forward to that conversation. And then, man, the business travel thing is going back in full swing. We are going to be dark the 18th and 25th. Of 2024, as well as the 2nd of October. And then I think I can squeak one or two in before I'm back out on the road. I have a 7-week travel binge to go on here. So if anybody wants to host the bartender without me, let me know. I'll hook you up. And I'll even provide you with a guest. All right. Well, with that, let's get into our conversation with Tricia. Like I said, she is the Chief HR Officer at Naviant. Over 20 years of experience in this process automation space. She's I was creeping on her LinkedIn, and you kind of worked your way all the way up the Naviant ladder, didn't you, Tricia?
Yes, true. That is true. I started as executive assistant. So
we're going to have questions about that. But first, we have kind of a ritual here at the Bartender. We like to dance people on. So let's give Tricia a good, solid TCB welcome show. There it is. I always threaten guests. I'm like, I'm going to keep playing the music until you dance. And sometimes you get old white guys that just sit there. And I'm like, come on, you got to do it. And then they'll go like, I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I'll take the chair dance. But Tricia's hands went up right away. So that says a lot about her college days. I might have questions about that too. Thanks for being here with us today, Tricia.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about the conversation.
All right. Well, we always like to start with a little bit of an origin story question. So I imagine that when you were but a wee baby, you didn't think this is what you were going to end up doing. So how did you get here?
Yeah, my story really starts with my family. So I come from a family of an accountant business owners. My dad owns a small accounting firm in the Madison, Wisconsin area. So I always thought I'm going to be an accountant. So that's kind of already been paid for me. We're good to go. And then I went to school and I realized I don't think I'm set to be an accountant. My brain just doesn't even work that way. So I just sadly share with my dad that maybe my career path wasn't going to be, what I always thought it would be. It's been interesting actually in the work that I do now, being able to kind of reflect back on that time and the pressure that we put on ourselves to really determine like, what's our future job going to look like?
When you're
right out of college. Exactly.
Did you break your dad's heart a little bit though?
I was actually fortunate because I have two older brothers, one of which went into accounting. So I owe everything to him for, fulfilling that dream for dad. Like take one for the team, take the pressure off for the rest of us. So yeah. So I went to college actually for IT. So my background is in business and technology, and as many people's paths grow and evolve into something completely different than they were originally thinking, I'm very non-traditional in HR, and I've really found my way into HR just, by kind of applying myself to things that come really natural to me. And that's how I found myself to where I am today.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the Tricia outside of work. What does the Tricia outside of work do?
I'm probably the biggest definer for me right now is that I'm a grandma. So I have, 4 stepkids, and 2 that live in the area that I live in northern Wisconsin, and 2, within driving distance from us. And we have 4 grandchildren that live right in the community here. So a lot of my time is spent chasing them around. Outside of the grandkids, I'm an avid golfer, and we like to spend a lot of time in the lake. We also have a lake home up here.
Well, that's a requirement if you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin.
You have to have a lake home. That's true. Yeah. That's true.
I love it. Lori and I play golf too. I am a terrible golfer, but I love it so much.
Same. My husband and I say the same thing. It's like we golf an incredible amount, and you would think we'd be amazing golfers with the amount of time we spend golfing, but we're terrible, but we love it.
I think there's a ratio of beers consumed to good golf, and it's getting that right?
Yeah.
No beers, bad golf. Too many beers, bad golf. The right amount of beers, that's the top of the curve there.
Right. I could see that.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about the things that you're doing at your organization, because we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about remote work, and that was what kind of hooked my eyes when I got your information from your agent. I was like, man, that remote work thing, we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about return to office policy. We've talked about managing remote employees. We've talked about trying to build culture in places where you don't just bump into each other on the way to coffee or on the way to meetings. And so tell us a little bit about Naviant and how post-pandemic you've settled into this, embracing this full remoteness, and how you've been successful at it.
Yeah. And it really has been kind of post-pandemic for us. So prior to pandemic, we really were all in office, or full in office workforce. We did have a few remote employees. So we were kind of used to that concept of we got to reach out to people, even if we don't see them in office, and check in, see how we're doing, try to figure out ways to keep them engaged in the same way that we're keeping our in-office employees engaged. The pandemic hit. We always say we just closed our laptops and we all went home and really just said, like, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks and we'll get kind of back to business as usual.
Whoops.
Exactly. Couple weeks turned into a couple months. And I would say really maybe
I don't know what that was.
Felt right. It was maybe like a year into it that we kind of realized that, I think we could do this. Like, I think we've really figured out a way to be remote and be successful. And, we should, start to implement things now to help, support our team during the time that they are remote. And really it was through the success of that and kind of the evolution of how long we were keeping employees remote that it just evolved into, we're going to stay remote. The other thing that happened during the pandemic around that same time is we started to recruit remotely. And that was a game changer at Naviant. I mean, when all of our peers were talking about, the complexity with finding folks, we weren't having that. We were actually, and we still continue to have a challenge of we're flooded with applicants when we open requisitions. And so now what we need to do is figure out how to bring in, the right quality applicants to give to our hiring managers, because quantity is not an issue for us. So that was kind of the evolution of how we got from kind of the state that we were in to where we are today. And even I'd say during that in-office time, part of our growth is through acquisition. So we also had offices in other locations. We had, our Madison, Wisconsin headquarters. We were in Cleveland and we were in Salt Lake with actual physical offices and some workforce in those areas as well. So we had already started to kind of dive a bit more into, the hybrid or having people in multiple locations and how do you connect them when they're on similar teams and trying out, different philosophies with that. And is there importance in getting people physically together, in a certain cadence? So, we're already kind of getting practice at that during the pandemic and a bit pre to that as well. So I think that also helped to set us up for success for where we are now, which, I mean, we're in a really successful place from a remote perspective.
That's fantastic. Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
I have a quick question, Tricia. When you were in the midst of the shift and then deciding to stay fully remote, did you have any pushback from leaders who were not in favor of having 100% remote teams?
I don't think we really did. No, I think it was really our leaders that were driving that. And certainly the employees, I think, were hoping that might be the case as they could see things starting to unfold. But it's probably part of the success that we've had is we do have a really innovative leadership team. Probably some of that is also we're in the tech industry. And so you're going to find really, innovative people in this space, I think, as well. So it was really, driven more by the leaders. I don't think we had anybody that certainly questions about, how will we accomplish this? And a lot of those types of discussions that we walked through. But I think everyone was encouraged and hopeful that, we'd be able to accomplish it and make it successful.
Nice. Yeah. I think that would be a huge component of a successful move in that direction. Because we had some challenges at Cable Labs with trying to, accommodate everyone's preference. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. And so, there was just, I think it was kind of there were some people that just didn't have a comfort level with having a fully remote team and how to lead them differently. So, we had a lot of conversations about those things.
Yeah. And I think that's still an evolution for us. We meet as the greater leadership team. So really kind of team leads to our C-suite monthly. And we talk about things like that so that people can kind of brain share on, what unique things are you doing that you're finding success in with your remote, employees, which is all your employees.
Yeah. How many employees in the whole company?
We have about 140 employees, and they're spread out in about 30 states right now.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I said to Tricia in the pre-show, that's a lot of tax setups.
Yeah. And employment law was how I responded.
She's like, yeah, taxes are easy. Law, that's the thing.
Yeah. We've run into that as we've expanded our footprint, trying to accommodate all of the state laws. And Leah, who's on the call here, can attest to that.
She has to deal with
a lot of that fell in her lap as we were figuring.
Yeah.
So, Tricia, what would you say to an executive who says, I don't know about this work from home thing. How do we know they're working? I need to see their butts in seats. to really understand and prove that we're gonna be productive? Like, what would you say to that guy? I'm assuming it's a guy.
I feel like that is the question that we get the most from other leaders that are maybe trying to figure out the remote landscape. For us, it hasn't really been a question of, are people working? Are they accomplishing the things that they need to? Because we can see the results. We're a highly metric and goal driven organization. We have shared corporate goals, shared metrics, all of our departments, and then, via individuals all roll up into those metrics. And we're continuously sharing that content. Individuals know what their own metrics are, from a utilization perspective, or if it's sales, right? Like sales is such a good example. If you're working remote and you're not selling anything, I mean, there's your metric. You're not producing and performing in the role. But even from a technology perspective, the work is available, and we have metrics around those pieces too. And so, we know how much revenue you're generating for the organization. And we also talk a little bit about when we talk about this with other leaders that, we're not so worried about like, are they here at 8:00 on the dot? And then do they stay the entire day and they check out right at 5:00? I think that is historically, like when I started my corporate career, that was a thing. Like that was a huge consideration. If someone came in at 8:05, it's like, we're kind of talking about that. Like, how do we correct that behavior? But, we don't care about that. And, we want to make sure that we're providing an environment that allows people to be really productive. And I think some of that is letting go of some of those more traditional thoughts, that those things really don't matter. And somebody doesn't have to like secretly tell me or like secretly go like put some laundry in. I mean, we work in our homes and you were spending time going to the break room before, or people would take a lap outside just to like have a moment to clear their minds. So they're doing a load of laundry in lieu of that, and that helps them, or they're getting dinner ready. It's like, we don't really care about that. The other thing is we're really focused on who we hire, remote work is not for everyone. And
for sure.
Some people I think are self-aware of that. We've actually had a few people come in and really feel like they could work remote, and then they kind of identified, it's too challenging. I can't do it, which is okay too. But we try to capture that the best that we can kind of on the recruitment side when there's still applicants to identify, A, they would work really well in a remote environment, and B, that they're really motivated to be part of a growth organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny when people do the I need to see them in the office. That's where we're productive. I think back to being an HR person in a technology company, one in particular here in Colorado, and the amount of time that I watched being wasted every day.
Right.
People just bullshitting, going to somebody else's cube and parking it in their guest chair for an hour, just bullshitting about the football game or whatever. Like, so much. I'm like, I can waste a ton of time at work, right?
Yeah.
Me running downstairs to put my wet clothes in the dryer, that is pales in comparison to the amount of time I can waste, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And those really don't have, I mean, it's interesting because when you're in a remote environment, I would say you're more intentional when you outreach to others. So you don't have those kind of unintentional stop-bys, or I always talk about the receptionist used to report to me when we obviously had a receptionist.
Yeah. And
there was always this challenge of people would stop by and chit chat for a half an hour. That was kind of the space to go, but you don't really have that when you're remote, because you actually have to call that person and be intentional.
So the flip side of that, though, I mean, our focus here at SkyTeam is on relationships, right? So we've written a couple of books. There's one right there, You, Me, We, When We All Need a Friend at Work, and How to Show Up is one, right, Ruby? Makes a fine Christmas gift. It's almost Christmas. I know it's not, but it is. It is. Those things like the camping out in someone's cube or leaning on the receptionist's counter for an hour. Obviously productivity hits, right? It's a thing, but it was a thing that built and developed relationships, because you just said it. Now you have to call them, and we just don't do that in the same way. It takes a whole lot more intentionality to build relationships. So what is your advice for someone that's coming into Naviant right now? Like, if I'm by myself here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I don't know anybody, I'm certainly not going to just start dialing for dollars. I'm probably just going to keep my head down and get my shit done and go have dinner, right? So what do you tell the new employees in that regard?
Yeah. Well, in one way, we don't just rely on the employee to be a really good remote employee. And so certainly there's that aspect of it. And, we're encouraging and helping to, encourage them to reach out. We have this green light policy. We use Microsoft Teams as kind of our major communication channel. So if somebody's green, it means you don't need to even say like available, you just call them. And that becoming part of the culture, helps with some of that lack of a need to reach out and kind of get permission to connect. But we do a lot of things corporately to help build those connections for folks. So, our mentor program. So we have, every new hire gets a mentor, and in a lot of ways, their mentor is a cultural mentor. And some of that is helping them to navigate the remote landscape and just figure out kind of how to participate from a remote perspective. In a way, it gives them one of their first connections. Their mentor reaches out to them before their first day, gives them some tips and tricks. See you on your first day. They have an intentional meeting with them. Everything is scheduled for our new hires for their first week or two, to make sure that we've really filled their day with a lot of, opportunities to connect with others. Most every team at Naviant is meeting. In some cases, they meet daily. So like our technical support team meets for a half an hour every morning at 10 a.m. And it's, I'm trying to think what they call it. It might just be a check-in. HR, we call it our HR jam.
Nice.
But literally 30 people get on a call for a half an hour to talk about kind of what's going on, what's the game plan for today, who's having some technical issues or running into some technology challenges that they need help with, who can help. So those pieces, help to build some of those bonds. And we're heavy camera on users. So have your camera on so it feels like we're together in the room. We're heavy chat users. So any meeting at Naviant, the chat will be blowing up with emojis and comments and things that aren't even related to what we're talking about, which is funny and where people can really bring out their personality. We also do a knowledge share. So every Wednesday, the entire population gets together for 30 minutes, also at 10 a.m. So they must, maybe I have that other time wrong. But anyways, the intention is there's different focus areas, and there's all kinds of people in the company that come in and talk during the knowledge shares to give updates on what's going on. And again, like participate in the chat. We do celebrations. So we celebrate if somebody had a baby or got married, personal things like that. All of our wellness initiatives and our connectivity initiatives are all created remotely. So think about anything that you were doing and we were doing in an in-person environment. We are finding ways to do that remotely. Like one of the initiatives we're working on right now is a speed networking platform. We've actually done it once during one of our virtual company meetings, but it's basically a technology that kind of plops you all in to this similar type of technology, and it scrambles you all up and it gives you a new person every 3 minutes to chat with. We didn't know how people would like it being in the tech space, lots of introverts, but when we did that when we did that initial launch of it, it's been one of our highest requested programs to bring back. So we're going to find an ongoing platform to use for that. But yeah.
That's super cool. Before it gets lost in my chat window here, Ruby, you had a question about the suckers who ruin it for everybody else? You want to ask that question to Tricia?
Yeah, we're actually working with this leader, he's the CEO running an organization who is adamantly against work from home. And I think there's some kind of beliefs that are out of date. And also there were a couple people who really ruined it, who are not there anymore. And the rest of the team wants to have some more flexibility. And so I was just curious if you had any baby steps or ways for him to almost build his own confidence back in the process.
Clarifying question, Ruby, is old white guy?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Smart.
Because there's like an influence piece, right, on the people who work with him. And then also just wondering, what would you suggest for someone who's just so far against it to kind of take some baby steps towards it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the things that kind of come to mind for me, one is leaning into your leaders that are the most innovative to encourage the leaders that are least innovative. And I think we really did see that happen even within our own organization. And even it doesn't have to be least innovative, but it could be least interested in stepping into the innovation. So for me, it was really partnering with some of those leaders that really had a desire to figure this out, make it work. And having them do it and do it successfully really brought along the rest of the leadership organization. And so that really kind of helps to support the departmental function of it. And then from an HR perspective, I think our ability to show how we can keep our employees engaged and do programming really successfully remotely helped to encourage it as well. I mean, we were at an advantage because we were already remote. And so it's like, okay, how do we stay this way? And there really isn't a reason, if you can keep your employees engaged, there really wasn't a reason to come back. It's like, why are we requiring them to drive in to sit in these spots? And there's advantages and disadvantages to that too. So I would say leaning into the leaders that are already, there and doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I also think the recruiting piece could be an influential factor. Just recognizing how to increase that talent pool.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you said, Tricia. It was a game changer, right? For you.
It was unbelievable. Like prior to that, if we had 100 employees apply for a position, it was like, we did it. Like we've been so successful. Now we do our best to try to limit our recruiting. So we put more requirements on the candidates to ensure that we're getting quality candidates that match the requirements we're looking for, but we'll still get 1,000 candidates for a position. Just
the
with
world
that,
is bigger than Madison, Wisconsin. Who knew
I
that?
know. Look at all these people out here. So you're right, though, Ruby, in that. I mean, if recruiting is a challenge for a hiring manager, and it doesn't even have to be like Naviant recruiting across the nation, but just recruiting to a specific geographic area and recruiting, either hybrid or remote, people want that. I mean, you're going to attract more folks for sure.
I'm curious, of your 140-ish employees, kind of, do you know sort of generationally how they are,
good
right?
question.
Like, is it heavy on millennials? Is it Gen Z, Gen X? What does that look like?
Or is it all cool Xers like us, right?
So cool.
Exactly. We're just Xers. I don't know the exact makeup, but I mean, just off the top of my head, we probably are, fairly similar to just the generations in the workplace right now and what that current breakout is. Primarily because of the type of technology that we work in is very unique automation technology. It takes a long time to get all the complex certifications and really at-bats at the different types of implementations those folks are doing. So we have a lot of folks that have been, doing that type of technology. So we'll say like the Gen Xers for quite some time, but our primary recruitment audience is definitely the Gen Zs. So that's who we're seeing most of our candidates
Doing all your recruiting on TikTok, are you? Is that how
exactly? We are big YouTube short folks. So if you haven't seen that yet, I've even got a couple out there myself that I've done, but I have actually somebody on my team that's focused on employee branding. And she does some pretty cool.
Oh,
YouTube
I'm going to go
shorts.
find a Tricia short and I'm going to put it in the show notes.
Okay.
So if you're watching this later, you'll be able to see it.
How many
people do you have on your HR team?
And we're very fortunate. There's 5 people on our HR team, which we know is very unique, but I think, isn't that great? I know. I always feel bad when I talk to other HR folks. They're like, I have 140.
Did you manage to get finance to take payroll? Because if you did, you'd be my hero.
They do primarily have payroll. They do. I will say our CFO is kind of my buddy. So yeah, he willingly took that. I had to take compliance though. So it's kind of a give and take. Yeah. But I think that's part of it too, is, in order to, we just added our 5th member onto the team, and part of, my championing that bringing on another member was, as we continue to grow, in order to be as engaged or keep our employees as engaged as they are, our retention is on fire. It's unbelievable. We're in the 90s for, retention, which is great. But in order to continue to hold up the type of culture we have at Naviant, we really need to invest in our HR team. And I mean, we're really fortunate. Naviant has absolutely, responded to that.
Nice. Yeah. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Well, that that sort of leads me into the culture question, because, that was the holy grail back in the day, corporate culture, defining that culture, maintaining that culture. You used the E word earlier, engagement, right? We've sort of shifted our language from culture and its stability to employee engagement, but it's all the same thing. In an entirely remote workforce, how do you intentionally build culture that results in retention rates like you just described?
Yeah. I think some of it was already foundationally built just in the type of company that we are. It's really kind of the roots of Naviant. We were founded by a family that really had an intention of having good work-life balance. So I think having that foundation of, okay, we always want to have really good work-life balance. We want to care about people when they're having personal challenges, things like that. We want to be able to respond to that. But we also want to be a growth company. I think having that foundation has allowed us to keep the culture that we still have today. And there's a lot of different things that I could point to, like even Naviant's growth vision. We talk about, we want to grow at this rate. And here's the reason why, not just because we want to be this like growing, corporation. It's because we get to see the benefit that it brings to our customers. We talk a lot about the importance of our customers to the work that we do. B, it is good for the employees. So you talked earlier about my career path. In a company that's not growing, that would have never happened. So the fact that an executive assistant 15 years later is now sitting in the CHRO seat is because we were dedicated to our growth, and that type of growth is available. We have so many different examples of that. And then we also talk about philanthropy and our ability to kind of give back to our communities across the nation, because that is a shared value at Naviant as well, just to be really philanthropic.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Ruby made a point in the chat, and I just want to shine light on it. Because I remember fighting the headcount war for HR in many of my HR jobs, where they're like, we already have you. Isn't that enough? Why do you need more people? And Ruby's point in the chat was that you might need more HR resources to support a remote or hybrid team. And I think that's worthy of a call out. And Tricia, talk to us a little bit about your strategy for building the team to support this 30 statewide employee population.
Like the HR team. Yeah, that's a really good point. I wonder, I'd have to think about that, and obviously more more insight to that. But do you need to have a bigger HR team to support a remote population? I think you might have to have a bigger HR team to support a strong culture, especially if you're going to have your HR team drive your corporate vision, corporate communication, because we participate and we really own all of those pieces at Naviant as well. So if your HR team is going to do traditional HR tasks, I think that looks different than our HR team. We're a really strategic HR team, and we're, right at the table, and our input matters with, we get called out and asked about different initiatives, and we're allowed to drive those. So I think it might be a cultural thing. Hey, if you have a great, strong HR team, you're going to have a really strong culture, depending on what your HR team looks like and what you have them doing. My strategy around our HR team and our culture is, obviously bringing on people that I think add to the strength of the culture. And so that's been pretty consistent. I was really a HR team of one for, maybe my first 7 to 10 years. I had kind of some additional administrative help as well, which was fine. We were like 50 employees at that time. We've really kind of expanded and exploded over the last, 5, 7, 10 years. So my strategy has been around aligning people to do the work that they're best suited to do. So like the gal that does recruitment and onboarding at Naviant, the key characteristics that it takes to support our culture and start showing that cultural piece of it really early on. It's one of her strong suits. And actually even the person, as we were talking about YouTube Shorts, we've just added that position on to the recruitment onboarding team. And she's a marketing major that we brought in through internship like 2 years ago. And she knows what's trending, and, she's really good at employer branding. And so we've aligned her into that position. She actually came into a more traditional HR role through her internship. But that's really where she's landed, because we made that identifier and we adjust. So when we bring on a new person to the team, I'm talking to the team as a whole, like, okay, we're ready and we know that we need another person. It doesn't mean let's put them into this block. Let's talk about what we're all doing, where our individual careers are adjusting. We all know that there's a core amount of work that needs to be done, but I want all their input on, what are they doing? What do they want to continue doing? And what do we need for that next person that's going to come in to the organization? Now, that probably doesn't scale in, really large departments like our departments that have, 30 people in them, but it certainly does, with the HR team, and the HR team being such a core of our organization that I think it's important to get kind of that collective input.
Yeah, I think it makes a huge difference when an organization has a desire to have a strategic HR influence. They're different skills than a tactical HR.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, bare bones, keep the lights on kind of HR stuff. And, thinking about things like, leadership development and change management, change leadership, and being the internal consultants for those things. Core values and how that shows up in accountability around behavior. And so, I think it does make a big difference. It would be hard to be strategic with a very small crew.
Yeah.
Right? No, you still have to maintain the minimum pieces,
the core
specs.
Yeah.
As a core, but anything beyond that, it's a different skill set. It's a different division of time and resources.
Yeah.
And everybody needs a Leah to take all the punches from the vendors.
Leah can see like 1,000 plates all at the same time. It's impressive.
I bet.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Tricia, as we start to get to the end of our time here today, if you were talking to, if you were speaking to a bunch of HR people who are wrestling with this notion of culture building and keeping remote employees tied together in the spirit of Ruby's baby steps, like if I'm an HR person and I just don't even know where to start, like what's my first move to help build this remote culture in a way that is going to make sense? What are my first baby steps to getting on that path?
Kind of going from in person to remote, or
just in this like gray area where we've been for the last 4 years, where it's been like, it's 2 days a week in the office. No, it's 3. Okay, well, it's 3, but you pick the 3, and it's Tuesday and Thursday, and no, it's Monday and Friday. And, you know, some of our clients have been through so many iterations of return to office policy that people's heads are just spinning, right? It's like, am I supposed to be here on Wednesday? Nobody's here. I come to the office and I sit on Zoom calls all day. That's weird. Why am I doing this? Right.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of like our audience, that's where a lot of us live. We've tried so many different things to varying degrees of success, and not everybody's as fortunate as you. I know a lot of folks that are not talking about even close to the retention numbers that you're talking about. So we're going to follow in the footsteps of you and Naviant. What do we do first? How do we get on a successful path? Because man, we've been banging our head against the wall for 3 years now.
Yeah, right. I know. And in some ways, like the way that you described that just sounds so much more complex to me to try to establish that type of a environment and do it successfully. I mean, I think that the metrics piece is a really important part of it, because we are talking about leaders and influencing leaders, and they want to see the results of it. So even from an engagement perspective, because if that's what we're measuring and trying to make a difference in, it's like, how are you measuring your employees' engagement so that as you start to implement some of these initiatives and these programs towards a remote experience, you're able to show the numbers to help support the either stabilization of engagement or the increase in it. So everything that we do on the HR side, we measure to make sure that it's working. And we were doing that in person as well. So we were able to see that translation as we made the adjustment and the change to see, is it working? Are we losing people because of it? And then through our growth too, because not just being remote, but also being, having significant growth occur over the last several years is a big adjustment for the employees as well. And the other piece I would say is networking with others, because this is where we're getting our ideas, and why I love programs like this, because, we should all be hanging out and talking. And so I love the way that you even described the philosophy of the corporate bartender. And we like to share, I think, as HR professionals. Yeah. And I'm sure that there's things that you all are doing that we'd love to learn more about. And even if it's in person, we found ways to, you can do escape rooms virtually. We found ways to make that work.
You can't go axe throwing virtually, though.
Oh, I bet we'd figure out a way. I'm going to figure that out, and I'll get back
That's
to
your
you
challenge.
on that. Okay.
Everybody goes to their own place and they wear a GoPro and like,
yeah. Oh, see, I love that.
Ideas are flowing.
Right. We've got this. And we also, we have lots of things that we, started right away out of the gate that were almost, kind of the bigger initiatives that were in a remote experience, so that it wasn't the day-to-day, because I think those things come over time. But that's a great example. We started doing our company meeting virtually, which was a big shift. But then we used to have like a fun activity that we would do after. Well, then we did a fun virtual activity, and it was actually much funner than people thought that it would be, and they were really engaged and they were interacting with each other. So people started to kind of get the feel for what this is going to be like. And then you're right. I don't remember who said it, but there became this point where it's like, we're all in the, there were points when we were starting to come back to the office a little bit where we're all here, but we're on Zooms because we also have so many of our employees that are remote. So to me, either completely in office or completely remote are absolutely the easiest ways to be. The hybrid piece is what makes it so challenging because now you're trying to support two totally different types of employees. You know, it's like you're doubling up your effort. It was actually a relief to us when we went fully remote because then we could just really lean into that and figure out that remote experience and what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know who needs to hear it, but you just heard it. Hybrid is hard. One or the other of the extremes is way easier. And I don't know about you all, but what I took away from this conversation is it's pretty simple. Treat people like adults and they will actually be them. It's kind of like the management book that Lori and I keep threatening to write. It's a 1-page book. It's called Don't Be a Dick. And when you open up the cover, all it says on page 1 is don't be a dick. It's pretty simple. But people are messy and people are complicated. Tricia, if people want to learn more about you, where do we go out there onto the interwebs to find you?
Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn is where you can connect or follow with me. That's where I put all my content and love to connect with other HR professionals on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So you'll accept LinkedIn connections from this motley crew?
Absolutely.
I'm sending it right now.
I'm accepting.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tricia, for being here with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's get into our end of show ritual, and then it is dinner time. All right. Funny things, also known as stupid things from the internet that made Eric laugh this week. This one, you know, I love when like real businesses and government agencies do like kind of campy shit. The Oklahoma Department of Wildlife, stranger, is this snake poisonous? Us, nah fam. Stranger, picks up snake, gets bitten, starts foaming at the mouth. Us, it's venomous though. I'm like, whoa.
Actually.
Wow.
The Oklahoma Department of Wildlife is being a particularo, Ruby. This one's for Ruby because Ruby and Lori and I love cats. Every building built mainly for children should be fucking weird like this. I can't even imagine how much happier my memories of early childhood would be if I could look back on having gone to kindergarten in a big old cat.
That's awesome.
From the HR files, funny thing number 3. HR, did you tell your coworkers you had handmade gifts for them and then you gave them the finger? Me, that was a gift from my heart. This is in the dad joke lane, and this is something that if I were sitting here in the car, I would look over to Lori and say, that's ZZ Stop right there.
Yes.
And last but not least, and I'm so glad you're still here, Ruby, because this one is for you.
Yay.
Whoa, Black Betty.
Black Betty. Bam,
and there's
lamb.
a spinner, Bramble Jam, Hammer Lamb, Mammogram,
Ponzi scheme.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Ponzi scam, Rambutan, half a gram, gambler
Half
man.
a gram. Whoa, Black Betty.
So I'm going to play my good feel story. I got into a copyright dispute with CBS Paramount. They flagged every one of my TCB videos. And I had to chop out the good feel story in a lot of them, but I filed an appeal and they were like, oh, you're just using it to share good things about people? Okay. I was like, okay, thank you. I don't even monetize this podcast, folks. Take a look. Here's funny or good feel story today. This is Steve doing Steve.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road for a story about a Minnesota bus driver who gave one person a lift and the rest of us hope.
God damn it, Steve Hartman, every week. Every week. And don't say I don't do my homework. I found an upper Midwest story just for you, Tricia.
Thank you.
Last but not least, our semi-quarantine cocktail is the emotional support parrot. It's a riff on the yellow parrot cocktail. You're going to need a little bit of absinthe, one Manhattan apartment with 3 emotional support parrots, a little yellow chartreuse, hundreds of noise complaints that couldn't be validated about these parrots, little apricot liqueur. A woman filed a HUD case and they found in her favor, people were making up noise complaints about this woman's parrots who were literally listed as emotional support parrots. So she filed a complaint and she won. They paid her $165,000 in damages from these made up noise complaints and $565,000 to purchase her shares in the co-op and her apartment. And they told the co-op that they had to adopt a reasonable accommodation policy for emotional support animals. Wow. I didn't know parrots could be an emotional support animal, but apparently anything can be an emotional support animal. Lori, you're my emotional support animal, so I appreciate you.
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Thanks to Tricia Shields for being here. This was a fantastic conversation. We will see you all next week with Squirrel. Go get some dinner.
Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you had a good time and learned a thing or two at today's happy hour, please share it with your friends. If you want to join our tribe, head on over to skyeteam.cloud/TCB or email us at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again, and remember, you've always got friends at the Corporate Bartender.